Welcome back to Database History. We often talk about how data drives profits, but today we're diving into a story where data is all about protection. We're going to talk about a powerful framework built to shield every single one of us, and its entire history is written in the language of databases.
So to really get this, we have to start with the idea of risk. In finance, you hear risk, and you probably think of stock market crashes or credit defaults, right? Financial stuff. But there's this other kind of more insidious type of risk that this whole system was built to fight, and that's ethical risk.
And that right there, that's the core of it. It's the risk that a financial product, just by the way it's designed, could cause someone real, actual harm. And I'm not just talking about losing a few bucks. I mean being trapped by confusing terms, getting misled by slick marketing, or just being taken advantage of by a system you're supposed to be able to trust. This was a problem that absolutely needed a solution.
So how do you combat that kind of risk? Well, regulators came up with a very specific framework. It's an acronym you'll now find at the very heart of financial compliance, UDAAP. So let's decode what that actually means. UDAAP stands for unfair, deceptive, or abusive acts or practices. The best way to think about it is like a special lens. Regulators use this lens to look really closely at a company's actions and figure out if they've crossed that line from just doing business to actually harming their customers.
Now, what's really interesting here is that these three words, they're not the same thing. Unfair means a practice causes you real harm that you couldn't have reasonably avoided. Deceptive, that one's pretty straightforward. It's about being misled or tricked, maybe by hiding the fine print. And then there's abusive. This one is so important. It's about a company exploiting your confusion or taking advantage of the trust you've placed in them.
And this is the absolute game changer. Under UDAAP, it literally doesn't matter if a company meant to cause harm. What matters is the result. So imagine a super complex loan product. Maybe the creators didn't have any malicious intent, but the way the fees are structured ends up trapping people in a cycle of debt. The intent wasn't evil, but the impact was devastating. That's the shift. It's all about the consumer's real-world experience.
Okay, so if it's all about the impact on the consumer, how in the world do you measure that? The answer is simple: data. Regulators enforce these rules by following the data trail. Every single customer interaction, every transaction, every single complaint, it all leaves a digital footprint. And that footprint, well, it tells a story.
Right, which is the million-dollar question, isn't it? A rule is just words on a page if you can't enforce it. So how do regulators and the banks themselves actually monitor for these harmful practices when you're talking about millions of interactions every single day?
It all comes down to building a massive, comprehensive database of evidence. Consumer complaints, that's your canary in the coal mine. Marketing materials become promises that are now on the record. They use natural language processing to scan call center transcripts, looking for patterns of confusion. Even the code itself, the logic that calculates fees, gets audited like a digital contract. Every single one of these data points is a potential red flag, another entry in the database of a bank's behavior.
Now, this whole system of intense data monitoring, it didn't just appear out of thin air. Nope, it was forged in the fire of a global crisis and then written down into a crystal clear set of expectations for every single financial institution.
The origin story for all of this is the 2008 financial crisis. That collapse really pulled back the curtain on how deeply these harmful practices were baked into the system. In response, Congress passed the Dodd-Frank Act in 2010. That act created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, and basically handed it the UDAAP standard as its main weapon to make sure that never happened again. And that has led us to a really clear set of standards. Today, regulators like the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, the OCC, they basically use a 4-point checklist. Are your terms and conditions clear? Is your pricing totally transparent? Are you treating all your customers fairly? And this is the big one. When you find a problem, do you fix it and fix it fast?
And this brings us all the way back to the beginning. All these regulations, this history, this massive data monitoring infrastructure, it all serves one single vital purpose: to build and maintain what I like to call the database of trust.
Because at the end of the day, consumer trust is just so fragile. It can take years, even decades to build it up, but only moments to completely shatter it. And once it's gone, it's almost impossible to win back. In the world of finance, trust isn't some fuzzy marketing term. It's the absolute bedrock of the entire system. Without it, the whole thing just crumbles.
So,
The next time you use any financial product, a credit card, a loan, even just a simple app, remember what's really humming along behind it. It's not just code and plastic. It's a massive, living database, a record of every promise made, every complaint ever filed, and every correction logged. In its purest form, it is a database of trust, and that is the real story of UDAAP. So the question is, what story does your data tell?